No, my you know my presentation this morning is called Some Stutter Law and Some Stutter Law Blocks. It's called, and whoever thought that 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 for an individual who for years to years considered himself a casualty of stuttering to do a 180 by becoming a host and DJ of a podcast. Not me. Some stutter law blocks historical roots, and this is a podcast that I host a weekly, and the history behind some stutter law is people who stutter have a million things to say, words that must be listened to. Dr. Paul D. Decker, Associate Professor of Linguistics at Memorial University, appears on the scene. I, you know, I informed Dr. D. Decker about my desire to expand my existing podcast, which I started in the COVID years, called "People Who Stutter Have a Million Things to Say." And so Dr. Paul D. Decker stepped up to the plate to help me. And my earlier podcast was rebranded, which was the A Million Things People Who Stutter Need to Say. And it was rebranded into Some Stutter Law uh, podcast. Some Stutter Law is Newfoundland's first podcast about stuttering, was launched in February 2021. And and the message of some stutter law is communicating differently. Some stutter law is now into its incredible fifth season with over 90 episodes that are heard around the world. The Some Stutter Law production team has produced episodes in English, French, and Persian, with plans to include an even more diverse group of speakers who face communication challenges. Stop the Some Stutter Law presses. Some Stutter Law is always exploring ways to create awareness, understanding, education, and acceptance about communication, uh, about communicating differently. During a Some Stutter Law production team meeting on August 9th, 2023, about finding a new social Some Stutter Law angle for season 5, the idea of hosting a live radio show was discussed. Dr. D. Decker jokingly referenced, "What is your blog?" The message of some stutter law blocks is unapologetically challenging blocks, and that is quite the word for a word for a person who stutters to say. And I have trouble with unapologetically. This is a eight syllable word. Now, blocks come in a kaleidoscope of challenges and opportunities through inclusive through inclusive collaboration. Blocks can be talked about and shared in order to break free from them. Speaking differently can be considered a block. Some Stutter Law Blocks is an innovative program because it's a sanctuary, a space where myths, stereotypes, stigmas, and are addressed and fade away. Blocks can be visible, invisible, and are found everywhere. Blocks are not confined to language or communication. They expand to touch every facet of our lives. Blocks don't discriminate. Blocks can be a deafening silence, Blocks can confine the limitless potential of those of us who dare to defy societal norms. Blocks can be cultural, racial, queer, trans, ethical, health related. Blocks can be intersectional, different, communicative, and overlapping forms of discrimination. The ultimate block is often the attitudes of others, those unwarranted judgments and misguided expectations. It's the pressure to reshape ourselves, all to avoid the formidable barriers that stand before us. Blocks aims to challenge stigma and dismantling of barriers, ensuring equitable access and creating of an inclusive society that values, embraces, and empowers diversity. Blocks can be overcome. I used to consider my stutter my block. As a person who stutters, by sharing my story about my block, my stutter is an opportunity to create awareness, education, understanding, acceptance of stuttering. Stuttering is no longer my block. I proudly declare I stutter. By sharing and listening to each other's stories, we learn to support each other and echo a challenge for acceptance and inclusivity. Your story is important. Your voice is important. So let's share and chat about your story, your blog. Now, just to give the group a little history about my story is, you know, first of all, it wasn't. I remember when I was growing up, I was always ashamed of my stuttering. I hid my stuttering and I became a covert stutterer. And I introduced myself often at meetings as, my name is Greg O'Grady. I am a covert stutterer, and I specialize in covert stuttering. This is to remind myself of my many yesteryears of when I hid my stuttering. And before I received speech therapy, I took speech therapy through the Toronto Speech and Stuttering Institute. Now we're going back a few yesteryears ago, and I had taken the fluency shaping program at the Speech and Stuttering Institute in Toronto. And before, if someone would ask me my name, my response would be, and I had both the primary and the secondary characteristics of stuttering. I would respond by saying, I would lift my left hand to the ceiling and say, look now, look now, look now, look now, look now, look now, look now. And I would repeat, look now, look now, look now. My name is Greg O'Grady. So my stuttering, I would classify my stuttering as severe. And thanks to the support of the Toronto Speech and Stuttering Institute, I'm able to manage my program, my stuttering. There are good days and bad days, like we all have. And I remember that, I remember when I started to seek speech therapy, my emphasis was completely on fluency. I wanted to be fluent. So how many of us started speech therapy that our focus was primarily on fluency? Raise your hand. So anyhow, over the years now, my definition of fluency has changed to management of program of stuttering, and I'm pleased to hear that there's a big paradigm shift change in thinking of the speech to language pathologists, because they're focusing more on the management focus, as opposed to the clinical focus on the correcting of speech. And it's interesting because when I think of stuttering, we all know about the Dr. Joseph Sheen's the stuttering iceberg, and the tip of the iceberg is the primary and the secondary characteristics, whereas below the iceberg is the 90% of the emotional component of stuttering, and which is the 10% above the tip of the iceberg is the physical component. 90% below is the emotional component. And I feel that the numbers are wrong. I feel that for me, anyhow, with a history of the severe stutter, the tip of the iceberg is 1%. The emotional component is 99%. Because I feel this is where the crux of the issue is for me as a person who stutters. And unfortunately, the emotional component is sadly neglected, and hopefully that that will be improving. That is being looked at more and more because we actually need more people who specializes in the emotional component of stuttering in terms of the counseling and support. Now, just a little bit more history about me. I retired from the city of Toronto in 2017, and so I moved back home to my roots, which is Newfoundland, and so I currently reside in Newfoundland. And I remember shortly upon my arrival in Newfoundland that I was looking for support for stuttering because I was very spoiled living in Toronto. I was very involved very involved with the Speech and Stuttering Institute. And so as a thank you for the Speech and Stuttering Institute, I developed a walk, run, and roll for stuttering awareness. And I was very fortunate to connect with a wonderful group of volunteers. And so this walk and roll, run and roll was started in 2000 and I believe 2012. It ran for 9 years. When I relocated to Newfoundland, I realized that there wasn't much in terms of formal support for people who stutter. So and there wasn't as much awareness as I thought there would be. So I started up a walk, run, and roll stuttering awareness. And so again, I was very fortunate to work closely with the Newfoundland Labrador Association of Speech Language Pathologists and Audiologists, NLASPA. And that is a huge thing for me to say as well, NLASPA. But anyhow, so I was very fortunate to connect with with the NLASPA, and so we just completed our sixth walk, run and roll in Newfoundland, and we all of the proceeds raised is all the proceeds raised is goes towards offsetting speech therapy. And since we started the walk and run and roll, we have raised $17,000 and towards our bursary program. And the proceeds of last year's event, we were able to provide $1,200 worth of bursaries. And and also this is part this falls under the umbrella of the Newfoundland Labrador Stuttering Association because I remember in the 2018, NLASPA asked me to speak at a conference just to share my story about being a person who stutters, and then following that. Following my presentation, I was contacted by one of the attendees present, and her name is, I'll share her name is mm, uh, Michelle Delahunty. And Michelle asked me if I would like to meet with with her to talk about the needs of people who stutter in Newfoundland Labrador. So Michelle and I met for coffee, and we you know we and we we had decided to host a community meeting, and we 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 held a community meeting in November of 2018, and eight people showed up, and that night the Newfoundland Labrador Stuttering Association was born. And since 2018, the NLSA has raised a lot of a lot of awareness of blue stutter in Newfoundland and Labrador. Now we have accomplished a lot. However, there's more work to be done, and so I think I'm running out of time. But if anyone wants to look at some of the episodes of Some Stutter Law, you can find us at somestutterlaw.ca. Anyone, if you want to know more about the Newfoundland Labrador Stuttering Association, you can find us on www.nlstuttering.ca. So thank thank you very much for your time this morning, and thank you, Tom, and team for hosting StutterFest, and you're really doing great work. And also, this is my first time talking on StutterFest, so thank you very much.